In an earlier video, we talked about some of the request settings that you can make as part of your API request, some of the parameters, things like certainty and priority. You can actually also modify those settings at the account level. And in other words, you can modify it in such a way that all of your testing after that it already has those settings made. And the way you do that is to log in and then go to this link here that says API settings. Now under API settings, this will customize the way that Tenon tests for all of your tests. Now you can override this at any time. You can override this at the project level, or you can override this at the specific test level. But this is a great way to set your own default settings for um, Tenon, and let's go through these. So default certainty, again, we talked about this in a previous video. Certainty is in this case, certainty is what the minimum certainty you want on your test. So remember I said that each test has its own certainty score. You can set this so that you don't get results for anything below that minimum certainty. So I'm going to set this to 80. Okay. Now, in a practical scenario, what I would recommend doing is leaving this as low as you can, except for instances where you're using it as part of something like continuous integration or something like that. Um, so I'm going to leave this at 80 for now. Default priority is, again, like I mentioned before, the prioritization score for the results. In practical instances, I would never go below 60 on this, because there are going to be some things that I think are important. They're gonna land here during prioritization scoring between 60 and 80 that I think we should probably pay attention to. 100 is way too stringent, in my opinion, but we let you have it, so there you go. Next up is default fragment, and what we're saying here is if you're only sending over source, set this to yes. And probably 99% of the times, you're going to want to leave this to no. Importance is discussed at length in the documentation, but basically, um, the importance goes towards calculating the priority. And so at this point, when you're setting your own global defaults, I'd set that to 0. You can override this at the project level or at the test run level. So on a practical basis, I'd leave it to 0. Default level has to do with the WCAG level, the level A, AA, or AAA items under WCAG. By default, it's going to be set to AAA. You can change that to whatever you want. You can change it to A, AA, or AAA. I leave these to AAA because I find that certainty and priority are more useful, because there are some WCAG AAA guidelines that are important. Uh, Reference info. This has to do with your um, API calls themselves and whether or not you want a reference link as part of your results. In a previous video, we showed how I have that recommended fix link in the test results. Um, is part of your API responses. You can turn that on or off. Um, Basically, you would turn it off um, if you really felt that the amount of data being transferred back and forth was a big deal, and it usually isn't. So I'd leave it on. Next up is store results, whether you want Tenon to store results or not. Some people want to use the API only. They don't want to store results either for privacy or security concerns. Um, and so you could say yes or no on this. Keep in mind that in that earlier video where I looked back at the history and saw that view results, if we say no to this, we won't get that link and we won't be able to see those results. All we would see are issue counts. Finally, some text fields. Default user agent string. is the user agent string identified by Tenon, or more accurately by Tenon's headless browser that it uses. This is not something that has any impact on testing, but some people may want to customize this as a way of whitelisting Tenon for accessing a test environment. We don't do anything magical. We don't change to a different rendering engine based on this. So it really is just a string of text, and you could put anything you want in here. Next up is viewport width and viewport height. And viewport height is not really as important as viewport width is. We provide these so that you can actually dictate the size of the viewport for Tenon's test engine. And why this is really cool is because you could use this to test responsive designs. So you probably don't want to set this at this level right now, because remember, this is API settings for your entire account. It's probably more appropriate for you to set these in the project. We do set 1024 by 768 for our viewport height and viewport width, because some users with low vision will use this type of resolution to make it easier to see the screen. Finally, default delay takes a numeric string for how long Tenon should wait before it triggers testing. Now, default delay right now is unset, but if you happen to know that you need to wait for other assets to load, like JavaScript files or CSS files that get delivered from a CDN, or that you know that your page takes a long time to render, you can change that value. So if I was to say 1000 here, that would be 1 second. That would be 1000 milliseconds. And so Tenon will not execute its testing until that 1 second has elapsed. I'm going to remove that. So now I've saved my API settings. All of my testing will adhere to these settings unless I override them at either the project level or the test run level. And so that is editing your API settings.